computer. Okay. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
Here, I'll show you guys we got only a couple people in the room so far, but I know a bunch more people said that they were going to come. Kevin, did Alyssa ever respond to your email?
She has not yet responded. So I know that Assemblymember Burke is going to be presenting at Horizon. So I'm assuming that she may be staffing him there and hoping to have a chance to meet her face to face.
Great. Did you send that to Juliana and Linda Rosenthal's team as well?
You know, I did not.
Yeah,
that's a good suggestion.
I definitely think we should hit all of the, all of the possibilities.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah.
Great.
Ruchi, your picture is glamorous. Where is that?
Thank you. It is in India.
Oh, nice. And Aaron, did I see you pop up there for a second?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, sorry, I'm doing stuff at home, so I'm on my phone, but I will be here and present and can jump on video anytime. Hey, Pammy.
Great. Yeah, I'm sorry about Sunday. My phone was at like 30%. And then as I literally watched it just like go down and down and down. And that's why I was like, oh my God, let me see if I can use Amy's phone. And then like, she can't put apps on her phone without the Wi-Fi. And I was like,
yeah, it was partially on me too. Right after that, I bumped into a grower friend at this Cannabis Harvest Fest and got caught up looking at and buying his cannabis. So I didn't see your message about trying to get on a call until a little bit afterwards. But yeah, we'll keep working on it.
Cool. Was that and that event went well?
Oh yeah, it's super cool. It's the New York Harvest Festival. It's the longest running cannabis cup in America, and doing it. I think this was the 25th year. Wow. Super cool and rootsy cannabis, like New York cannabis scene. So it was awesome. I've actually been hearing about it periodically since for a bunch of years, and this was the first time I made it. So it was really cool.
Cool. No, Oliver said he was going to come because he was going to take notes. So let's see. I guess if I record the meeting,
I'll text him to check on it too.
Yeah, he said he's coming for sure, so he might just be running a couple minutes late.
Okay. Yeah.
And I can take notes for the first 30 minutes and.
Well, yeah, you have to go.
Then I have to drop off. Yeah.
Right.
But I can do that meanwhile, and then I'll pass them along to Oliver. And I don't know. I mean, I'll be talking too, but I can take notes.
Cool.
And then I'll pass them along to him.
Let's see, influences on this. There we go.
Avery, is there a plan to do introductions, or did that already happen?
I don't know. I've gotten some feedback from a few people that says that that's kind of wasting time and we want to get back into it. But obviously there's some new people in the room, and that's why I always feel like it's better to talk, just to say who we are and what's going on. And I know, Aaron, you've made a lot of moves, and I was going to talk about the article that was in that marijuana moment. So if you want to jump in at that point and talk a little bit about how you have what inroads you've been making, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. And I guess I generally agree. Most of the people are already familiar. Not taking too much time on reintroducing folks is a good idea. But I see that Andrea is here, who's an awesome lawyer doing some great work in the state. And
cool.
So maybe particularly because she hasn't been in meetings before, to get a chance to introduce herself.
Yeah. Well, I think what I was going to do is just see if anyone new wants to say something, because that's
yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
new folks intro.
Cool. All right. Well, I mean, if Oliver shows up, so I will do a brief intro, and my head is cut off, so maybe I'll just sit down here. Can everybody online hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, fantastic. So My name is Avery. This is the 6th meeting of the New York Psilocybin Action Committee, I believe. And we are really helping. Our goal was to create a network and combine people moving in this, disparate field of psychedelic law and advocacy. And I feel like we've really done a lot of connecting. And we have people, Dennis Kitchen out in Buffalo with the Lens. He was gonna show up, but he just messaged me a few minutes ago saying he couldn't make it. I know Bill and Pammy, you guys are down in the city. Aaron, you're in the Hudson Valley. I know at one of the locations that I really want to start hitting is like the central New York area, because really the goal, and now we're starting to, we are in the last quarter of the year. I want to start putting that a booklet together that will go to all of the assembly people, and we'll have the committees kind of talk about that. And I mean, maybe that's in the marketing committee, or if that might need to be a separate like planning thing to really kind of edit the research and history and testimony of all of the information that we want to submit to the lawmakers. And I really think that has been so much interest federally and just across the country about psilocybin in particular, with regards to psychedelics in general. I mean, Biden just federally pardoned all federal possession charges and actually directed the DEA to look at descheduling cannabis. It's like, I mean, that is an incredible movement. Do
we have a legislative liaison committee yet, like officially?
Well, I think so. Etienne, were you part of the legislative committee?
I was, yeah.
But you wanted to step back, you said?
Not a legislative part of the communications committee. I've just been like super busy last time. I haven't
Okay.
had a chance to check out too much shows.
So, and who is the chair in that one?
Because I don't mind being chair for that.
Okay,
I do not mind. It's just the communications was a bit too much, so I think I'll just focus on that.
okay. Yeah, because that's one of the things that I did. I know we kind of started to transition into Discord and like the communication and planning. I think September and October just were ludicrously busy months for people.
Mhm.
And so I think that a lot of people were overwhelmed with just life in general. So I want to encourage people on all of these committees to start, getting together through Discord, because we set that up as an area where we can come together and then have a quick chat, or even like if you're not there at the same time, it's easy to leave strings of communication, and then it really it gets kept in that format. So before we go any further, does anyone anyone new want to say anything, introduce themselves, or?
Hi, yes, I'd like to say hello to everybody. Hi there. My name is Andrea Gamalski. I'm an attorney. I'm based in Kingston, New York, in the Hudson Valley. And I'm a strong advocate for decriminalization, anti-prohibition in both the cannabis and the psychedelic realm. I think that it's been far too long that we have criminalized and penalized the use of certain chemicals, which have been shown to be effective in the treatment of very debilitating illness, and have shown to improve people's lives and well-being. So it's a passion of mine, and I've certainly been involved in the New York State Bar Association Cannabis Committee, as well as, networking on a local level, wanting myself to move into the cannabis realm in terms of, my business model. So I'm interested in helping with advocacy, anything I could do to improve access to outreach in this community in Kingston. I'd love to pitch in and help with that. So, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Aaron, for inviting me. Pleasure to meet you this weekend. And it's wonderful to be around like-minded people. So thank you.
Fantastic. Anyone else online that wants to say hi?
Hi, Avery.
Hi, Lee,
Good
how
to
are
see
you?
you.
Yeah,
Good. Hi. Yeah, I've been absent for the past few meetings. Sorry about that. I had a lot of work stuff come up. But I'm the executive director of the Hudson Valley Psychedelic Society. Aaron's here, and hi, Andrea. Aaron told me about you and said you were really cool. So it's good to see you.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you. I've heard good things.
And you're like down the block neighbors.
Yeah.
Oh, this is awesome. You're in Rosendale?
Yeah. The address is technically Kingston, but it's really more Rosendale. I'm on Callup Road.
Oh, we were literally neighbors. We could walk to each other's houses. That's crazy. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to meet you, and I hope we
Nice
get
to meet
to meet in person soon.
Yeah, we'll have
yeah.
to do a lunch or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
great. And Oliver, is that you just tuning in too? Do you want to, this is your first NIPAC meeting as well?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Wonderful to be here. I work with Aaron Ganuth and Decrim First. And yeah, I'm really excited to be allied with you and to look for ways that we can work together to promote good policy. So I'm a theater director by trade. I directed a play called What the Constitution Means to Me, which was my biggest success and was on Broadway and all that. So I've got sort of hands in, the theatrical world. I'm a good producer, and I've been an activist for years, and I've been working with Decrim for the last year. So I'm always looking for a way to be helpful, and it's really great to meet you all. I live in Queens, New York, and I have 2 cats. You'll see some of them over the course of the Zoom.
Great, thanks, Oliver.
I love your movie, Oliver. I saw it at the film festival a few years ago, and it was phenomenal.
Are you talking about the Constitution, the movie of Constitution?
Yes, yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yes,
it's basically a capture of the Broadway show, but I'm so happy you saw it, and thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it was fabulous. Yeah.
Cool. Well, so.
Hi, can I say hi too?
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
new.
sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jana. I'm another Aaron invitee. I guess there's a lot of us here today. I am a sexuality and relationships expert by training. That's my career. I'm a professor at NYU, and I have a private practice, and so that's what I generally do in talks to do some research on sexuality, relationships, and psychedelics in hopefully the near future, although that hasn't happened yet. I am relatively new to the psychedelic activism space, but I'm really passionate about getting, Aaron knows this, my own personal mission is getting psychedelics to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. And I am interested in, seeing how we can move that along, and especially with the different kind of trajectories for how that can happen, starting with New York State that we have going on right now. Interested in kind of making sure that interested in contributing as much as I can in making sure that the bills that get introduced in New York State this year are the best bills that we can create, and then getting the support that they need to hopefully pass them. So, and my expertise is in with the relationship space is finding win-win scenarios. People come to me usually when they're at crossroads or in conflict, when they're not on the same page about different things. And what I do is kind of come in, assess the situation, see what what are the needs and limitations of each party involved, and then try to see what are the possible options for where it could go from there, and then what of those options is like the best win-win scenario for everyone involved. And I'm hoping that those skills can translate into this space when that's necessary. So I'm happy to
Fantastic.
be here.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, and I know, Ruchi, you have to go at 8 o'clock, right?
Yes.
So it's 7:48 now. Do you want to give your committee update right now? And then we'll let Wayne take over, and then we'll go into the rest of the committees and things just for time's sake, because I don't want to run out of time for you.
Yeah, no, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Thank you. Yeah, no, and I mean, Avery, I'm just gonna piggyback off of what you mentioned earlier about putting that booklet together. And that would fall under IT and communications. And we've had multiple conversations around making all information material. But I just think we, as a team, we need a little bit more research, and we need like more focused meetings to discuss the text. So I did start a conversation on Discord to see what everybody had in mind to start putting something together. So yeah, I can send a doodle for dates next week. To see what would work for everybody, but we can open the floor to see what everyone's thoughts on that.
Okay, yeah. So who else is in, so that's right, the IT, communications, marketing, and branding is all one committee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so is anyone else here on any of those committees?
Kevin
I
is,
am. Yeah, I am.
Tammy is.
Haven't been super present, so I'm not sure what's been happening. I haven't been on Discord at all. Have I missed anything, Ruchi, now that you're here?
I mean, I made some updates. Kevin had made some notes on the changes that needed to be made to the website as is, which I went and made those updates. So that's where we're at right now. But we do need to, like we talked about earlier, we need to create new material. And that's where we're really gonna have to meet and start doing that.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, the material exists, like, you know, even
Mhm.
like there's so much research coming out, and I know Wayne is gonna present some really amazing stuff for us in a few minutes. And you know, the history, I mean, Pammy, what you presented before the dialogue that we had for the Psychedelic Sisterhood, I feel you have a you know, that piece that you kind of read was a good synopsis of some of the historical use. And I feel like if we just hit, like, you know, some of the larger movements in the 60s and how the resurgence happened in the 90s to bring us to where we are now, that's kind of what I envisioned, you know, like those three main bullet points of like vast history, 60
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can totally put that together. I was actually in the process today of putting what we spoke about in the beginning as a like presentation, so I can look at expanding that and then Ruchi, I know we're not there yet, but breaking it up into content for the website and for social media, at least a projection of what it would look like and marry together.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I'd love some help on that, because right now, like, yeah.
Perfect.
It's a lot, and I've honestly been overwhelmed on like where to begin.
Mhm.
So like I would love to bounce some ideas and we can get started on that.
Absolutely. Now this week for me is going to be a little insane just because Horizons is on the weekend, but
Yeah,
after this weekend for sure.
yeah, that works better for me. Perfect.
Great.
All right.
Okay. Was there anything else, Ruchi? I know you did some updates to the website, and I saw that Corinne and I are now there. And I know Corinne is not here tonight, obviously. She's currently at the tail end of a family emergency that has resolved itself well. And so once she is back, we're going to revisit having all of the New Yorkers for Mental Health Alternatives come together again. So, you know, there's some of us in the room are going to be on that board. And then basically we just have to have another official meeting. And then I would like to start populating the NYMA website with more concrete stuff that is current. And then with just links to, you know, the research and things that we're working on.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool, cool, cool.
Avery, I believe you're added on the IT Discord channel, but if you're not, I'm still gonna check and make sure that you're added, because I know that you're always collecting a lot of like links and stuff for social media. So if you can just like drop them in the Discord group chat, then like, you know, I can pick those up from there and update them on the website as we go.
Okay, yeah, because I have a Google file right now where I've been putting almost all of the articles that I've posted on the Instagram. And is there, and this is something that I just haven't really explored Discord as much yet, is there like just a place where we can collect files or things instead of putting it into?
No, I believe like all document storage, we have to use Google Drive for that, and then we can only place the links in Discord. So, but that's fine. Like, you know, you can just drop the link on the Discord chat, and then I'll make sure to keep updated with the Google folder.
Okay, fantastic, cool.
All right, perfect. That sounds like a good plan.
Okay. Great. So did you have anything else before I know you have to go to class, so.
Yeah, no, that is everything that I had, unless anyone else had anything.
Or IT, communication, or branding questions? No? Okay, great. All right, thanks, Ruchi.
Thank you.
All right, so Wayne, are you here? I want to give you.
I am absolutely here, yes.
Okay,
Hey.
fantastic. All right. So thank you so much for joining us. I know I printed out your article, assuming that it had the bio at the end, and I must have missed it. But for those of you who didn't, did everybody get the email that I sent out? It did have Wayne's bio in it. Did you got the email? Did you read it? Some people, good. So I loved our conversation that we had the other day, and I know I'm sure we went way more in depth into like the serotonin and internal bodily communication, and I was blowing some minds when I ate dinner with my family yesterday, and I can't wait to hear what you have to get into here tonight.
Oh yeah, likewise. I really enjoyed our conversation as well. Thanks for having me, Avery. It's a humbling pleasure to be presenting here and reduce down at like 100 slides to like 30 that are, I think, going to demonstrate the essence of the diversity of psychedelics, both in their medical applications and social applications, and kind of where policy can support the best outcomes and all of that. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and just to stick to audio, just stop the video, that we can just kind of focus in on screen sharing. If you don't mind enabling that, it actually says that it may not be my choice.
Let's see, whiteboard, share. Oops, there we go, share screen. Share someone else's screen. I want to share my screen. Oh, here we go. Did that do it?
I think so. Here we go. Can everybody see that now?
Yes.
Yep.
The presentation, is it clear, or is the video kind of displayed over the slides?
It looks pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Excellent. Awesome. So yeah, this presentation, like I was saying, is a brief exploration of psychedelic diversity. We're going to cover some ground from the nature, natural psychedelics to the laboratory, and kind of touch on some clinical research, their current social use, and where that belongs in legislative policy. And this is just, for legal reasons, this is an educational informational presentation, and obviously nothing is for sale here. As a chemist, I get that question a lot. When I refer to diversity, I'm referring to four main things: locational diversity, structural diversity, pharmacological diversity, and the application of the substance. So I hope to cover in some brevity, but yet some adequate detail, where you can find psychedelics, what they look like in a chemical level and on a biological level, how they function in the body, and when and why they're used in general. And before I begin, I kind of want to establish a basis of using the same language. When I'm referring to drugs and receptors, which I'll be talking a lot about during this presentation, I'm talking about assemblies of atoms into molecules, being the drugs, and proteins being the receptors. A good metaphor for this would be a lock and a key, where the shape of a chemical structure is the key, and that kind of determines where it's going to travel in the body and what it's going to interact with, by and large. There's an old adage in chemistry, like dissolves likes. So things that are similar to each other chemically and biologically tend to interact. They tend to have activity. Our body creates a very wide variety of drugs, and these are called endogenous drugs, endo meaning on inside. And these drugs have a wide variety of functions, but they can generally act as chemical messengers, relaying signals in between either cells or tissues or organs or organ systems. They're there as helpers, but suffice to say that only compatible chemical messengers can speak a message to the body or to a receptor. So there will be either no interaction, or a substance could be essentially inert in the body, or it could be toxic, or it could be a pharmaceutical medicine, essentially. As I was alluding to before, messengers have their complementary receptors. The key has their complementary lock. And as shown both on the title slide and on this slide, we can see LSD, both that little structure in blue and that tiny structure in red amongst what looks like a bunch of macaroni. And that's actually a model of LSD binding to the 5-HT2A receptor, I believe, in the brain. When a chemical messenger binds to a receptor, this could initiate a cascade of activity. It could either cause genetic changes, it could directly cause a drug effect, or it could cause the body to release its own drugs to cause an effect. Now that we've kind of discussed the basic mechanics of drugs and receptors, we can move into exploring these central 5 points. I like to begin with the end. So this is the conclusion. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, these 5 points, other than these 5 points, I'd consider my day a successful one. The organ systems of the human body are in constant communication with one another via small chemical messengers is the first point, with psychedelics being directly related to those small chemical messengers as the second one. The third point, which is kind of covered more in detail in my recent article published in Psychedelics Today, but I will go into some detail here, is that chronic stress and chronic inflammation are actually the root of many common mental and physiological health disorders, and that psychedelics are inherently potently anti-inflammatory and highly effective and safe treatments for many of these chronic conditions. And finally, though, albeit there is a profound amount of safety and utility in psychedelic medicine, safe psychedelic access via any of these channels, clinical, religious, or personal use, does demand certain standards and oversight to ensure that we're having the benefit that we intend with the application of psychedelic medicine in society. So just beginning with that first point here, and discussing the interconnection of these particular organ systems, the nervous system, the digestive system, and the immune system. A little bit of information on each of them here. We're all familiar with the immune system being responsible for keeping track of our health, but not a lot of people are familiar with how it's regulated. It's actually inherently regulated by serotonin. Each of these little immune cells that you see here on this page, all the red writing underneath them, the 5-HT, indicates the serotonin receptor. So we have this widespread presence of multiple kinds of serotonin receptors, actually all throughout the immune system, white blood cells, red blood cells, platelets, all containing some form of receiving serotonin, but actually lacking the ability to make it themselves, interestingly enough. So that actually would be mediated, where they get their serotonin from is from the digestive system. In reality, 70% of the immune system is actually inside of the gut. And in addition to 70% of the immune system, we've got about 100 trillion bacteria, which is about 3 times the amount of human cells. So I joke that, you know, we're more accurately just a kind of transportation mechanism for microorganisms rather than an individual. But digressing from that very dry joke, these bacteria are there to release nutrients that are essential both for our immune system and for our cognition. 90% of the serotonin that our body makes is in the gut. And this serotonin is made from precursors from our food. So diet has an impact on overall health, but also these microbes, these bacteria, process those dietary precursors into forms that our body can absorb. And once those precursors are processed into neurotransmitters or something very close to a neurotransmitter, they're transported into the blood and distributed throughout the body. So what we're seeing here is this interconnectivity between the immune system, the digestive system, and the nervous system. You know, typically we think of serotonin as a molecule in the nervous system, when in reality it's this larger signaling molecule that's present all throughout the body and is a part of this intimate intercommunication mechanism mediated by bacteria, multiple organs in the body, including our blood, our intestines, our brain, our spine, multiple nerves, including the vagus and others. Compellingly here, there's also a link between all of the functions of serotonin within the nervous system, within the immune system, and within the digestive system, and a variety of chronic diseases. So if we have low serotonin, we have the onset of poor memory, low mood, ability of depression, anxiety, and OCD and autism. All of these diagnoses are linked to processing and perceptual disorders in serotonin in the body. So there's this need on a national level, on an international level, for medications that are able to interact with serotonin receptors and address not only chronic inflammation, but a large amount of chronic disease, everything from you know, irritability, anger, neuroticism, hypersensitivity to pain, all the way to obesity and diabetes are affected by inflammation and by the presence or lack of serotonin and you know, appropriate gut microbes and appropriate dietary precursors. So now that we've kind of demonstrated that, you know, none of these systems operate on their own, you know, as much as conventional medicine or might suggest that they're discrete, separate systems, the individual as an organism is inherently integrated. And as an integrated organism, we need integrated medicines. So to touch on integrated medicines, point two, psychedelics are directly related to the chemical messengers that we just discussed. Chronic stress and inflammation are the root of chronic health disorders, and psychedelics may be able to address those chronic disorders that we see in the US population and beyond through anti-inflammatory effects primarily. So first, let's go over kind of what inflammation is. We're familiar when we get injured, tissue swells up, it gets red, there's bleeding, there's pain, but there's also chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is far more insidious and less apparent. Over time, chronic inflammation disorients the immune system. It detracts from its ability to heal the body, and it can precipitate a wide variety of issues, from cancers to respiratory diseases to neurological diseases. So it can also be anticipatory due to psychosocial stress or economic stress, financial stress, past trauma. So what we're seeing is that inflammation is almost like an emotional journal of not only the era and the burdens, the suffering of the era and the environment, whether that's societal suffering, economic suffering, political suffering, emotional suffering, or environmental suffering in the form of chemical toxins or radiation. It's a record. Inflammation is a record of stress on the body. The more inflammation we see, the more disease we see in virtually every area that it's possible to contract disease or disorders. I'm going to digress there from too far into that, because I'm definitely reiterating what's available in my recently published article. Shameless self-promotion here. I encourage you to go read that. But let's hop into the interesting stuff, or at least what's compelling for this meeting. In particular, defining psychedelics and how they fit into policy. So that's powdered mescaline right there. You know, it tends to be scary stuff when you look at a drug in its quote unquote neat form, but psychedelics as a class are as diverse in their form as they are in their function, despite the historically negative narrative characterizing prohibitionist policies. There are hundreds of species of plants, fungi, and animals that contain psychedelics. We'll go over some of the natural diversity in psychedelics in just a moment here, and how that relates to you know, what we mentioned before about serotonin. But I just want to talk about the creatures on this page for a moment. We have fungi, cacti, another kind of, you know, a flowering plant, a sea sponge, and a toad. And what's unique about all of these types of creatures, from an amphibian to a fungi to a sea sponge to a plant, is that they all express some form of DMT. And when we look back at evolutionary history, sea sponges evolved about 750 million years, almost a billion years, and there's at least 6 species of them that produce DMT analogs. And when we look at this cladogram up on the top, you know, this is essentially a tree of evolutionary life, where, you know, the more branching there is, the more recent we have evolution, and the further down we go, the closer to the trunk, the more ancient the organism is. And you can see that the sea sponge is the first animal that we know of. So with 6 sea sponges containing DMT, it's very likely that not only are psychedelics pervasive across animal evolutionary history, but they likely predate the brain or the spine in their presence on this earth. With that being said, amphibians evolved about half that amount of time ago, 375 million years ago, and there's 4 frog and toad species that also produce various DMT analogs. You can kind of see the direction that this is going. Rodents telescoping even more in evolutionary time, 56 million years ago, and DMT is proven to be isolated from the rat pineal gland in the rat brain, where, according to a 2019 report, they discovered DMT in concentrations at levels similar to other neurotransmitters in the brain, meaning that psychedelics are not only nearly a billion years old and predate the brain as a manifestation on Earth, but they're also inherent to ordinary mammalian consciousness by default. outside of natural psychedelics, there's also nearly 300 synthetically derived compounds. That's a very conservative estimate as well. And despite this wide variety of psychedelics, we can essentially break them down into 5 structural classes, 2 of which I'll be discussing during this presentation. I'm going to zoom in out of order on tryptamines first, actually, because we've actually been discussing a few of them. Tryptamine sounds like a fancy word, but it's actually just a combination of 3 essential elements. That hexagon and pentagon that you see is called indole. Arm on it, and you've made a tryptamine. The very bottom structure there on the page is serotonin, and you can see that all these structures look very similar, from dietary tryptophan, the stuff that's in poultry, dairy, nuts, legumes, bananas, spirulina, and shellfish. That's an essential precursor to serotonin, to 5-HTP, another precursor to DMT analogs. So all of these are in the same structural class. All of these are just atoms away from one another, and all of these would have marginally similar or correlated functions in the body, binding to serotonin receptors in different areas of the body, and not only changing cognitive function, and changing inflammatory response, and possibly shifting the psyche as well. Touching on psilocybin and psilocin in particular, and their derivatives as well. To hundreds of fungal species, and a lot of potential here for anti-inflammatory, antidepressive, and anxiolytic effects, reducing anxiety, reducing depression, and reducing inflammation in the gut, all with recent studies that are further delineated in the article. And another thing that's discussed is triptans. We've actually had in some form psychedelic medications are available as pharmaceuticals since the early 90s. So as we're considering legalizing further therapies, both for inflammatory disease and for psychiatric disease, we can take into account the fact that these quite literally DMT analogs have been on the market for more than 30 years with high safety and high efficacy, combating cluster headaches and neuroinflammation, which are actually the basis, as we were discussing, of a lot of psychiatric and physical disorders. I'm going to pop through cannabinoids because we've already, thankfully, in the state of New York, reached recreational legalization and medical legalization here. But we're just demonstrating the point once again of a drastic overlap in the molecules that the body uses, are endocannabinoids, and the molecules that we see in the plant. So that there's a potent kind of pharmacological opportunity here to derive medications from cannabinoids, given that there's so much overlap between the way that they're structured and their effects on our body with chemicals that we already have in our body. And real quick, the last point, and probably the most important, which is why I wanted to speed through the rest: safe psychedelic access via clinical, religious, or personal use demands standards and oversight. As I kind of belabored with my prior 4 points, there's a lot of psychedelic diversity. Not only are there hundreds of kinds of psychedelics, but there are many manifestations of psychedelic use, from recreational use to clinical use to religious use. And I want to make very clear that beneficial psychedelic use is not limited to clinical settings alone. MAPS and the Zendo Project, as well as other grassroots organizations which provide psychedelic peer support services for individuals recreationally taking psychedelics, report that despite the fact that there are unique challenges to, let's say, taking psychedelics at a music festival, or taking psychedelics on a camping trip or in public, there are profound opportunities for benefit. And there are case reports of individuals having positive experiences despite
for the New York Psychedelic Association.
What's going on now?
Yeah, this guy's giving a talk. He has like a whole PowerPoint. I think you chose them.
You're on mute, Michael.
Thank you. All good. Outside of the Zendo project and other similar grassroots organizations that are protecting individuals using psychedelics in non-clinical and non-religious settings and having positive outcomes, there's a rich history of shamanism in nearly every continent for native cultures using ritualistically visionary plants, fungi, bushes, trees, leaves, and in addition to Kabbalistic Judaism, a 3,000-year-old tradition of connecting to nature, community, self, and divine source energy through the ritual use of visionary plants and fungi. There's also modern health, holistic health practitioners that are currently implementing these substances in underground practice with great effect. But I don't want to misrepresent the potential risks here of current illicit psychedelic use. And I also don't want to give people the wrong impression. On that bottom graph there, we see alcohol being the drug that's indicated with the downward pointing arrow. All of the drugs to the right are safer than alcohol. So I'm not trying to say that psychedelics are dangerous. In fact, the only 3 drugs more dangerous than alcohol are crack cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin. And even they have their place within clinical practice. But the risks here for illicit psychedelic use are from contamination with unwelcome or harmful materials like fentanyl. We see at the top graph the almost exponential rise of fentanyl deaths up until 2020, with no other drug even coming close in comparison of that trend other than methamphetamine. Besides contamination with unwanted drugs, we also have user error, as it were, accidental, accidentally taking too much, essentially having an overwhelming experience or an adverse psychological event, even being supplied a drug, let's say from an illicit source that was purported to be one thing and happens to be another. With research chemicals, this is a particularly a dangerous thing. If you have dosing ranges that are different between drugs, and an illicit source misreports what drug they've given somebody, that can be a bad situation. In addition, although these natural medicines are considered safe, there are contraindications. There are few but severe interactions with psychedelics with some pharmaceuticals. I'll say that at a recent meeting here in Denver, Colorado, I was happy to welcome to the stage a nurse practitioner who brought to our attention that lithium is contraindicated with psilocybin, and that we need to be medically responsible when administering psychedelics, either in recreational, medical, or religious settings. We have a medical responsibility to individuals taking these medicines. And besides that, there's also the possibility for emotional and sexual misconduct, especially with predatory psychedelic practitioners who are unexperienced or who are perhaps self-aggrandized or self-inflated. Grandiosity almost made the list here as the potential risk of psychedelic use, but generally that falls under the scope of emotional and sexual misconduct or abuse. This is why we have to have standards to ensure safety in this industry. Standards mean not only manufacturing and production standards and licensure for the creation of psychedelic medicines themselves and the tracking systems to go along with it, but also appropriate education for medical personnel, for therapists and facilitators, for police, and for the technicians that endeavor to cultivate, manufacture, and sell these medicines. What would be the least potent, least acceptable manifestation of psychedelic potential would be misinformed individuals, dissonance between law enforcers and lawmakers and patients, dissonance between religious bodies and economic bodies and therapeutic bodies. We have the same mission here, and the mission is to minimize human suffering in a radical way. And we have safe, effective medicines. And if we roll this out in an equitable and effective way, we can have long-term benefits. But those long-term benefits involve the equal prioritization of personal, medical, and religious possession. and use, because if any one of these three is secured without the other two will continue to exist underground and be driven to more desperate means or be marginalized. It suffice to say that there is an established and it should be well-respected religious history culturally of applying numerous psychedelics on numerous continents. There is a demonstrated medical potential of these substances, and there is a personal right to self-exploration that is predicated by the use of psychedelics in the first place. And for that reason, we need systems to support each one of these manifestations of use, from public educational resources, psychedelic support groups, to the medical treatment clinics and the affordable healthcare rates and resources for minority access that will guarantee that everyone can either personally access it, clinically access it, or religiously access it if they so choose. These reasons are actually why I'm aligned with Proposition 122, the Natural Medicines Health Act in Colorado. It does create structure for each of these three, for personal access and cultivation, for clinical frameworks that train facilitators and provide safe professional spaces for people to have psychedelic experiences, and provides critical protections for individuals seeking spiritual or religious use of psychedelics. Critical protections, by the way, that are not currently afforded in Denver, despite the decriminalization of mushrooms in the city. There's a church here of a congregation of 300 people, that the head of which is being brought to trial for up to 32 years in jail. With that being said, you know, this act would allow for religious, clinical, and personal access of psychedelics, and would ensure that individuals like this church, individuals in medical need, or individuals just looking to explore their mind and their heart, can safely and equitably access this medicine. And with that, I'll kind of conclude by saying that, once again, these 5 points are all I wanted you to absorb. So I really appreciate, again, the opportunity to talk here, Avery. Thanks again for your time, everyone.
Yeah, wow. Thanks, Wayne. I mean, are you open to answering questions if anyone has any questions?
Oh, absolutely. More than happy to answer questions here.
So anyone in the room, anyone online?
I have a quick question. I like to, oh, hi, I'm Pammy. I have a quick question about one of your earlier slides. You're talking about how psychedelics helped to have anti-inflammatory properties. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, if you can.
Sure. So the diversity of serotonin receptors all throughout the body, from the central nervous system to the immune system to the digestive system, provide a lot of opportunities for, you know, that the lock and key interaction. Since psychedelics look very much like serotonin, and our body produces psychedelics like DMT, there's interaction between psychedelics that bind to serotonin receptors and these receptors in the immune system, in the digestive system, and in the brain. So psychedelics are able to, even outside of their ability to be psychoactive, can be anti-inflammatory. Not only are functional mushrooms anti-inflammatory and immunostimulating in positive ways, but psychedelic mushrooms as well, from psilocybin itself to other derivatives within the mushroom having anti-inflammatory action. Some psychedelics are also antioxidants. In the case of like cannabis, some cannabinoids are several times more powerful, like to a factorial, than vitamin A or vitamin C combined. So there's and they're delivered directly to the neuron, right? So directly into the brain, where some medications stop at the blood-brain barrier at the neck. So there's a fantastic opportunity here to develop very specific either medication therapies of natural medications or even derivatives, psychedelic derivatives, pharmaceuticals that target this anti-inflammatory property and can exert it in either in the brain or in the gut for people who have neuroinflammation or gut inflammation leading to IBS or Crohn's.
Yeah, I see Aaron has his hand raised.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much, Wayne. I really appreciate how well you organized and presented all that. And I also really appreciate how you brought in the religious angle as well. I have a Jewish nonprofit and also been recently criminalized and facing some charges in New York. And I think you're referring to my friend Rabbi Ben in Denver, who's facing charges out there. And so that's actually something I've been in conversation with some people about. Particularly with the large Jewish population. I come from an Orthodox Jewish background, and there's a large and growing kind of what's still a fringe, I guess, but a very large, rapidly growing fringe of people working with psychedelic medicines and bringing them into both medicinal and religious practice. And I wonder if you've done. It seems like you may have done some research, and if you have thoughts about the taking the religious approach to psychedelic cultivation, access, et cetera?
Yeah, so I would say that a central body of standards allowing for the licensing of large-scale production could very easily ensure the safety of religious congregations. This could be set up underneath the same regulatory board that is setting the standards for the larger clinical industry, and would include very likely, registration as a psychedelic religious body, recording congregation size, things like that. But I would imagine that these types of standards to keep people safe would be essential, regardless of if the application is medical or religious, because when we're looking at an industry like, let's say, cannabis, the medical industry and the recreational industry are guided by the same standards. So if there's obviously if there's any at-home production of either cannabis or psychedelics, it becomes harder to control supply. But if there's any a body that wishes to welcome a large congregation of people, I believe as a professional chemist that they have an obligation to keep their congregation safe. And that responsibility could be met by allowing the same framework that regulates the production of psychedelics on a clinical or recreational level to be applied to the religious level as well. This would not impede access in my mind whatsoever, as there would be structures in place to allow for personal cultivation or personal possession outside of like an institution like a centralized church as well. But anyone seeking to call people to them and say, here, take the medicine that I produce for you, would have an obligation to prove that it was safe if they wanted to do so publicly and advertise their services, as it were.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Of course.
Kevin, you have a question?
Yep. Hey, Wayne, thank you for your presentation. I am policy director for Cluster Busters. So really appreciate anyone bringing attention to cluster headache and other pain conditions and psychedelics. Was curious to hear your take on why do you think that there's been such less focus on psychedelics and pain and inflammation than there has been with research focusing primarily on mental health and certainly advocacy focusing on treating those conditions as well?
Absolutely. So there's this kind of space, there's a relationship between how they're shaped and how they function. And psychoactivity and anti-inflammatory effect don't necessarily correlate. So there's a lot of unexplored psychedelics and psychedelic derivatives that were deprioritized in the past because they may not have bound to the psychoactive serotonin receptors and been as flowery and grabbed at the attention of the initial synthesis size of compounds, but now that they're digging deeper into the structure function relationship of psychedelics and being able to tease out and increase things like anti-inflammatory effect or psychedelic effect respectively in new drugs that they're creating, there's a renewed focus on the anti-inflammatory drugs. For instance, the mushroom derivatives that I brought up, norbaeocystin, norpsilocin, aerogenesin, and baeocystin. They're all psilocybin and psilocin derivatives, but they don't actually cross the blood-brain barrier. However, strains rich in them tend to create this really positive feeling in the gut and this almost intuitive awareness of ease and positivity. And that's very likely due to these derivative compounds binding to serotonin receptors in the gut. As we saw in the presentation, we are an integrated organism, and the central nervous system is not the only pharmacological target by which natural medicines interact with. They touch many parts of the body, and direct psychoactivity is not always an indicator of medical potential, although there is profound medical potential in psychoactive psychedelics. There's also, ironically, if you could coin the term non-psychoactive psychedelics, a lot of medicinal potential there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Wayne, I have a question. I mean, you were talking about the efficacy of psychedelics as an anti-inflammatory. Do you know what the threshold dose for that is? I mean, like, so would a micro dose help soothe inflammation?
That's more difficult to say. I can't really speak to like what dose thresholds would elicit the. It's more of like a that would be probably on an individual basis more, because everybody's kind of like baseline inflammation, their immune system is kind of their own unique organism, their allergies, their responses to things, their environmental stressors, etc. But yeah, this is precisely why, though, we need public education and support for these kinds of things, because very quickly these kinds of standards can be established with just by networking the community that exists, along with a little bit of a deep dive into some very particular research to establish tolerances. I was connecting the dots, as it were, between anti-inflammatory effect and particular compounds. I haven't exactly like metered out the extent to which they are anti-inflammatory and how much you'd have to take to get the benefit. But those particularities are not only accessible, but I'd say imminent.
Awesome, thanks. Anyone else? Carrie?
Yep, just if we're going to be, I see the cluster headache contingent is here and my empathy to them. As a member of the IBS contingent, are there any studies you could recommend looking at or reading for further review? Because I'll be honest, this thing's ruining my life. I can't go camping anymore. It's killing me.
Understood. I feel your pain. I'm a cancer survivor myself, and the use of mushrooms and cannabis during my therapy was instrumental to relieving symptoms. So I'm happy to support. So this is like a general sort of announcement. Anybody looking for support who's suffering from a chronic condition, please reach out to me via LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram. I'm happy to provide resources at the very least. To the question of IBS, in the Psychedelics Today article, Inflammation Nation, IBS is hyperlinked with like 4 or 5 different studies. All you got to do is you just literally type in psychedelics Inflammation Nation into Google. It'll be the first link that pops up, and just hover over IBS. There's 3 or 4 studies on it.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep, and I did include,
Absolutely.
I did include a link to your article in the email that I sent out. So I think everyone.
Your emails for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Avery.
Yeah. Etienne, did you have a question?
Did you find any relationship between like SSRIs and especially tryptamines? Because I know that lithium is the only one that's kind of interacting. But I was curious about like SSRIs.
So the audio on that was a little bit difficult, but I'm hearing SSRI mushrooms or psilocybin in general? Is that a general question about that?
Yeah, I guess the relationship between tryptamines and SSRIs,
The-
mostly psilocybin.
Got it for sure. So it's interesting. SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are classically purported to increase the amount of serotonin in the central nervous system. So they block serotonin from being brought back in. So SSRIs have to be able to get in serotonin's way, essentially. But recent research is showing that SSRIs and a similar class of drugs, SNRIs, selective serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, actually induce their effect, their antidepressant effect, through anti-inflammatory mechanisms at the level of the neuron. So the antidepressants, classical antidepressants like SSRIs and SNRIs, have anti-inflammatory effect to the extent that the newest generation of antidepressants are being designed specifically for their anti-inflammatory capabilities. So suffice to say that this old model of like serotonin deficiency as the root of depression or is kind of getting significant doubt cast upon it. But as far as the relationship between SNRIs and SSRIs and serotonin over time, the difficulty is that the body is smart and adapts to things that we take every day. And the long-term efficacy of SNRIs and SSRIs inevitably is reduced as the patient gets tolerant. And as the patient becomes tolerant, the dose is increased. And as the dose is increased, more physiological side effects begin to stack. And what we see are like heart palpitations or peripheral nerve disorders. And I have two brothers that are severely autistic, and they've been treated with every SSRI and for some reason Adderall as well, and a variety of antipsychotics. And a majority of them can cause metabolic changes, which can downstream affect diabetes and chronic pain and a litany of things which are unnecessary add-ons to the existing mental diagnosis. I'm not speaking against pharmaceuticals whatsoever, but I am saying that to speak to the relationship between serotonin and SSRIs or SNRIs, classically they're supposed to increase the amount of serotonin in the brain, but long term do actually exactly the opposite. And if we're looking for sustainable therapies for depression, I believe we need to be looking at integrative therapies, which provide more support for the individual, their unique process, and kind of coming to terms with their journey and finding support within themselves and the ability to cope. But suffice to say that the onus is not on the individual. It takes a medical architecture, communal architecture, and in some cases as well, like religious architecture to allow for true healing, integrated healing. So yeah, a bit divergent in my answer there, but I hope that I addressed your question.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Anyone else? I know Wayne, we already kind of went over our time, but that was such a fascinating, discussion. And there's just so much more that I feel, that we're going to continue to discover as research continues to open up. And, it's with all these other conditions and ways to apply the medicines that we already have. It's really awesome.
Absolutely. I'm excited for the future, and I'm humbled again to provide this information to the review board here. And again, want to invite anyone who feels compelled to reach out with further questions or a need for help or what have you. I'm happy to be there and be a part of this movement and this community.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wayne. And I see Juliana, you are on as well. If you and Aaron want to talk a little bit about the marijuana moment article that came out with I feel like that's the first time New York law has seen some national kind of news, and I was super excited to see that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's always great to join these meetings. We are very excited to have amended this bill and to have reintroduced it essentially in its current form, and have worked with Erin and Decrim Nature to, really try to make it as strong as possible. We actually have met with Sutton, which that was a connection that we made through NIPAC. So we appreciate that. And we're still waiting on some feedback from her, but essentially, we're really proud of this legislation. It will decriminalize the cultivation, use, and exchange of what we're defining as natural plants or fungi, which includes DMT, ibogaine, mescaline, but it does not include peyote because we know that we want to be respectful of our indigenous relatives. So it also decriminalizes psilocybin or psilocin for individuals age 21 or older. It also decriminalizes the manufacturing, possession, or distribution of paraphernalia as well. And it has a lot of great protections for people who are, entering into contracts. You can't just dissolve a contract because somebody has been found in possession or to have used any of these substances. You can't have revocation of a professional or occupational license, denial of mental health, substance use disorder, or behavioral health services solely due to the use of the substances listed, protection for prosecution of child abuse or neglect solely because of a guardian's use of the substances listed. And we know that microdosing especially has become super popular among moms, and it's been very helpful for moms. So, and for parents overall. So we know that, it does not warrant having your child taken from you or being penalized or punished for that. You can't there are protections for denial of medical care, including organ transplants, just because of possession or use of substances that are listed, or termination or discrimination by employers solely due to the use of the substances listed on the employee's time. So we really, really, and thank you, Erin, and thank you, Decrim Nature, and everybody that we've been working with, and thank you all of you guys for all of the input, because we've really wanted to highlight access and make sure that people were not being punished for something that is really great and could help, solve a lot of issues. So yeah, we're very excited about it.
Erin, did you want to add anything?
Just thank you, Juliana and Assemblymember Rosenthal and Nick and the team. I'm also really excited and proud of it, and there was a lot of back and forth that went into it, but as is I think it's a really great piece of legislation that goes in the direction of access and decriminalization, and hopefully puts us in the direction of decriminalizing more psychedelics and drugs in people. So I think it's really great, and would love for us to really get as much support around it as possible. And then there's also the Research Institute bill that Assemblymember Rosenthal has introduced, which I'm hoping we can also get support behind, particularly in pushing for the other bill, the Burke, the Assemblymember Burke's bill, to hopefully push for that to include more elements of the Research Institute bill, if not just kind of like merge into it. But I'm hoping we can, like as a group, we can kind of get around where the the policy points are that are related to access and decriminalization, and push for that. We've now been working through this Decrim First coalition and group that now is a national coalition around it, and that includes Decrim Nature and other groups in New York. And that's the idea of that, is to really push that point that we need to prioritize decriminalization. And while we focus on all the great research elements, the justice elements have to be prioritized, and we have to be on a path that doesn't just restrict those to naturally occurring entheogens or psychedelics.
Awesome. Yeah.
And
I do think that the all of the bills can be enacted simultaneously, because Burke's bill focusing on like the clinical aspect while also, mentioning religious and personal use, creating that, clinical therapeutic framework, I feel would help so many people that won't feel comfortable either growing their own or, finding something. And like Wayne pointed out, having a structure in place to ensure that those clinical situations are getting, appropriately, cleanly grown material, I think is really important. So I think I would love to see all three of them, roll out as one, and I think that would be really incredible.
Well, I would, I'm hoping that we have a chance to, well, actually, but this maybe I can segue over to Dr. Jana. We do have some opportunities, and we've had some opportunities in this group to advocate to the Burke team, who are very receptive to changes on their bill. And I'd love to see everything work all together. But at the moment, I would say that the Burke bill needs significant changes to be something that is really in the discussion of access decriminalization and the priorities that I have. And so, and that, hopefully some of this this group aligns with. So I think that, what I would like to do, and maybe Dr. Jana would like to speak on this. She's got a relationship with the Burke team, and I'll let her speak to that. But I guess basically, one of the ideas is to try to put together some policy proposals towards that bill, and see what the reception is. But Jana, if you want to talk on that.
Yeah, sorry guys, I've been cooking while listening to everything. Thanks. I actually wanted to ask Juliana first, how are things going on the side of in Albany, basically, the people that you've been talking to so far? How is it looking for the decrim bill, both on the Democrat side, and I would love to hear if there's any movement, any connections on the Republican side, because I think it would be great to have a bipartisan type support for these bills.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we completely agree with you. And right now, so since session ended in June, the legislative session, and it will start up again in January. So right now, essentially what we've done is amended our previous bill striking psilocybin from the Schedule 1 list of drugs. We've created more of a regulatory framework, and this will be ahead of next legislative session. So we'll have to reintroduce the bill with a new number before that happens. And really what we wanted to do is make sure that we get the language out there as soon as possible and have a bill introduced so that we can point to it and say, hey, this is what we've been working on all summer. This is like the final product, hopefully, but we're obviously open to to any changes. But this is something that we're really excited about, and we're going to send around what's called a Dear Colleague so that we can spread awareness of the legislation and invite our colleagues to sign on and co-sponsor. Since we just got a number for it very recently, right now, what we need to do is kind of build the word and kind of build awareness of the fact that we have amended this legislation and that we are reintroducing it, and we plan to push for it next session. So right now, it's really about building that coalition and building that awareness within the assembly and pushing it from that angle. Right now, it's kind of, things are picking up now, but it's kind of the off season in Albany. People are really, working on their priority list and their legislation and prepping it for when they do reintroduce it next year and picking what it is exactly that they will be, championing. So that's what we've been doing. We've been building the bill, and we've been working on it, and we finally got this number. So now the next step is to really, make sure that other lawmakers are aware of it and do any meeting or educating or whatever we may need to do to convey the bill's importance and why we think it's so necessary.
Awesome. That's awesome. And the bill is great. I read it last month, and it's you've all done a pretty good job with it. When is that dear colleague letter getting sent?
Hopefully within the coming weeks. Right now, things are a little bit crazy. We are having, it's a little bit unrelated, but we're having a donation drive for the asylum seekers that are coming to New York City. And it's been, the generosity has been a little bit overwhelming in a great way. It's been fantastic, but we've definitely, we're running around to the shelters in our district to drop things off. So it may have the review process and the editing process may take a few weeks, but we are definitely actively working on it, and it is definitely a top priority for us.
Awesome, thanks. Can I ask one more question? Have you been working with or in touch with the Burke side of things, and what have those conversations been like?
So Assemblymember Burke and Assemblymember Rosenthal have definitely been in touch. They have agreed to work together and kind of, build off of each other's ideas and legislation. And we've been attending these meetings, and I think we've all kind of been a part of the same space and respect each other's approach to the issue. And so yeah, we're working together, and we're working parallel, and it's all good, it's all love. So
it's a good place to be in, all good and all love. Yeah, so as Aaron was saying, I have a meeting actually with Alyssa, who's the chief of staff of Assemblymember Burke, tomorrow to kind of discuss their bill. And this is the first meeting, so I want to get a sense of where they are and how they feel about it, how open they might be to broadening that bill, because it's currently fairly limited to the very kind of clinical medical setting and model, with no decrim aspects of it at all. And I want to see to what extent they might be open to adding some of those components.
Yeah, Alyssa has been attending the meetings, and we have kind of gotten into that with some of our other independent meetings with the Burke's team. And that's something I can share with you offline, but you have that meeting with her anyway, so it's, yeah.
Any info or feedback would be great, or also what people think about that bill and what elements could be added that would make it something that people are more excited to support.
Well, that's I mean, with Linda's bill already having the decrim element, I mean, does every bill presented have to have that in it?
Good question. My understanding is, and Juliana, I would love to hear from you, but if both of those bills pass, then you don't need that. But if there's only political will for one versus the other, then and especially if the regulated use is something that has more chances of being picked up, then we would definitely want to incorporate some decrim if possible in it. That's why I'm not sure where the political will is in Albany for one or the other, because regulated use and decrim are different paths that both need to happen, but how and when and how quickly, right, is an open question.
Right.
Juliana, what do you think?
Well, I am a bit biased, I must say. If it were a one or the other, I mean, obviously we do take the approach that, I mean, we don't want to see the same mistakes that we have made with marijuana and the legalization process, which is still, there's a lot of confusion. There's still a lot of, back and forth. People are not sure if they're allowed to sell or if they're not. And I mean, the gap between medicinal legalization and recreational legalization was a bit too big in our opinion. We we would have liked to see, that decriminalization aspect a little bit sooner. So because of that, that's why we wanted to make sure that we highlighted access and that decriminalization element in our legislation to kind of avoid that bureaucratic and administrative kind of maze that we found ourselves in with cannabis. So, and we also, not only is it a maze, it's people are getting lost in that gap, people are being arrested and people are being prosecuted, and we don't want to see the war on drugs continue as we up in Albany try to figure out what it is that we want to approve or don't want to approve, or you know what I mean. So for us, that's why we decided to take the decriminalization approach first. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I obviously am going to say that we prefer our bill, but.
and John, I would love to continue the dialogue, but it is 9 and we have a couple other like internal things that I kind of want to just go through real quick. And yeah, I'm super excited. I'd love to hear what your how your meeting with Alyssa goes tomorrow, and maybe we can follow up later in the week. So I know Ruchi already talked about the IT and communications, and I feel like that kind of covers the legislative element, that committee events. So I know Linda didn't make it to the meeting, but we the Sean Rao house party was a blast. I think as a fundraiser, it didn't raise a heck of a lot of money, but I know it got a lot of attention, and a lot of people, everyone that went was really excited. Sean played an amazing version of Dolly Parton's Jolene that is still stuck in my head. He was like, Jolene. Oh my God, so good. And just as another event coming up, we do have the Mycelium Open, which is a disc golf tournament on October 29th. And I just want to encourage anyone else on the events committee to get together, because I know we had talked about doing like a launch to kind of showcase the Discord, and I think that just got dropped because everyone got kind of busy. And so if we could do something before the end of the year to kind of create some more buzz about all the bills that are being presented, because I think that's one of the things that is really going to help get legislators on board with all of the different bills is if the constituents are excited about what's going on. And if we make the noise that the legislators should support these, then they have to, because they listen to us, right?
I still think that at every event you're having, there needs to be stamped postcards. All they can do is put their name, their address, they put it in the mail to their representative. I worked at DPS, believe me, we pay attention when all of a sudden we start getting several hundred postcards in the mail a day.
Well, I know, and I designed a paper copy. I know Ruchi redesigned everything, and I'll make it a point to have those ready for that October 29th, and then moving forward to other events. Because I agree. Having something concrete show up. Just to then transition into fundraising and finance, which I don't think anyone specifically on that committee is here right now. So I'll just speak to the fact that woohoo, we finally got the NYMA account in our name. So we can actually take I think Corinne deposited the $24 or whatever it was after paying Sean to perform that we were able to raise. And then, but that now is something that we can start telling people that we can legitimately take the funds in. And then once Corinne comes back, we're going to send that doodle poll out to everyone on the board of NYMA, so that we can have that initial meeting, establish the board, talk about some planning things, and then move forward. And yeah, the last thing logistically here is that our next meeting is on November 15th, and we'll actually be going down to the Hudson Valley and meeting in person, I believe, Lee, with the Hudson Valley Psychedelic Society. Is that, am I correct in that? Lee, are you?
Yep, yes, yeah. That'll be with us. I have to get in touch with Corinne about I'm not sure of the details of where the meeting is happening. I don't know if you all found a space yet.
So does the Hudson Valley Psychedelic Society doesn't have a home space?
We don't have our own space.
Okay.
So when we have meetings in person, we kind of jump around at this point. But we could find one for sure for the meeting. I just wasn't sure. I reached out to Corinne, and haven't heard back yet, and I didn't realize she had a family emergency until a few days ago. But we'll be in touch about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And find a space. But yeah, we're not like Collar City Mushrooms, unfortunately. We don't have like a home base at the moment.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm super excited about that. And then, just
Yeah, me too.
it'll be a great opportunity to get together again.
Yeah, definitely.
And if anyone, is in this area and wants to carpool, I'm sure we'll go down as a group. And we will be just coming back because it's like 45, 50 minutes. Is that?
Like an hour from Albany, I would account for. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's an okay drive.
Cool.
Will that meeting be earlier in the evening or the same time?
Oh, good question.
Because we're getting into winter
We are getting into
given that it's a
winter.
long drive, it might not be a bad idea for us to bump it up a bit if we can.
Yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Did we establish a time, Lee?
We didn't establish a time yet. And I was also thinking though that maybe on the earlier side would be better. So,
Like a 6:30 to 8?
yes. Yeah, somewhere around there, maybe. Or yeah, maybe even earlier, like 6.
Okay. Yeah. We'll
We'll
cool. I
figure.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, great. I like that.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone on Zoom that joined us, and thank you all for being here. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Avery.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Avery.
That was amazing.
All right, let's stop the recording.